Cuba defies all expectations as North America's most enigmatic nation. Did you know Cuba is home to the world's smallest bird, the 2-inch bee hummingbird, and has a literacy rate higher than the U.S.? Yet it's also one of only 2 countries where Coca-Cola and McDonald's are banned. How did this island become such a land of contradictions? Let's find out in today's video as we unravel Cuba's astonishing realities. But before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel and catch our latest videos. Cuba, the Caribbean's crown jewel, stretches over 1,200 kilometers of sun-drenched magic, making it the region's largest and most captivating island. Cuba also boasts 9 spectacular UNESCO World Heritage Sites, each brimming with history and charm. From the cobblestone streets and colonial grandeur of old Havana to the rolling tobacco fields and dramatic limestone mogotes of Viñales Valley. Don't miss Trinidad, a pastel-hued time capsule of Spanish architecture and Afro-Caribbean culture. These treasures, alongside others like Castillo de San Pedro de la Roca and Desembarco del Granma National Park, showcase Cuba's rich heritage, stunning landscapes, and enduring legacy as a cultural and natural wonder of the Caribbean. And just like Cuba itself, its national flower, the delicate mariposa, or butterfly jasmine, is as resilient as it is beautiful, symbolizing purity and rebellion in its fragrant white petals. Don't you know that Cuba is witnessing an unprecedented flight of its citizens, with 738,680 reaching the U.S. from 2021 to 2024 and 5,000 leaving in 2024 alone, many risking dangerous routes to Spain, Mexico, or Serbia. This isn't migration for opportunity, but a desperate evacuation from a failing state where even basic survival has become uncertain. The exodus reflects multiple occurring failures: a shattered economy with 500% inflation, political repression, and crippling shortages. As working-age Cubans flee, the population plunges below 10 million, with record-low births of 71,000 in 2024 and 25% over 60. This demographic freefall, leaving fewer workers to support more elderly, proves the crisis isn't temporary, but an existential threat to Cuba's future. At the core of this crisis is the collapsing supply chains, as Cuba's food crisis reaches a breaking point. Cuba's once stable food distribution system has collapsed, leaving shelves barren and millions scrambling for basics like bread, eggs, and cooking oil. What began as periodic shortages has spiraled into a permanent crisis, with Cubans now spending hours in lines for rationed goods, only to find government stores empty. The causes are manifold: decades of agricultural mismanagement, U.S. sanctions choking imports, and a currency system in freefall. Even staples guaranteed under Cuba's rationing system, like rice and beans, arrive sporadically or in meager quantities. The result is that the Cubans now battle hunger daily, with parents skipping meals to feed children and elderly Cubans bartering possessions for food. This desperation has ignited an exodus unlike any in Cuba's history. Over 62% of households report regular meal shortages, according to United Nations data, and malnutrition is rising, particularly among children and the elderly. A mother talked to the reporters.
Children are supposed to get 3 kilograms of milk a month, but now they are only giving 1.5 kilograms a month.
The salesperson Rosalia Terrero mentioned the devastating problem occurring here.
If you don't have rice on the table, pasta or macaroni, it is not as noticeable. But when there is nothing at all, it hits very hard. Some go to bed without eating anything, just water with sugar, if they have it.
For many, emigration is no longer a choice but a survival tactic. Doctors, teachers, and farmers risk treacherous sea crossings or grueling overland journeys to reach the U.S., Mexico, or Spain. The irony is cruel. The same Cubans who once formed the backbone of their society, educated, skilled, and deeply rooted, are now fleeing en masse because they can no longer feed their families. The demographic toll is staggering. Towns across Cuba are emptying, with schools closing for lack of students and hospitals losing staff faster than they can train replacements. The government, once adept at spinning scarcity as revolutionary sacrifice, can no longer mask the truth. Hunger is eroding national unity. Older Cubans who weathered the 1990s special period say today's crisis feels worse, not just due to the food shortages, but because the social contract has shattered. As the island's population dwindles and its economy flatlines, the question is no longer whether Cuba will recover, but how much more it can lose before hitting rock bottom. Beyond food shortages, Cubans face alarming scarcities of everyday essentials. Essentials as soap, toothpaste, and toilet paper have turned into luxury items. In 2024, Havana residents endured 6 months without rationed toothpaste, while some resorted to washing clothes with hand soap due to detergent shortages. The crumbling state system, riddled with supply failures, now delivers erratic quantities of subsidized goods, leaving 89% of families in extreme poverty. With official stores empty, Cubans are forced into the risky black market, where prices soar 10 times higher than government rates. This isn't just hardship. It's a systemic collapse, eroding dignity and driving more to flee. The healthcare crisis deepens as hospitals run out of antibiotics, painkillers, and even basic supplies like bandages and syringes. Outdated equipment and frequent power outages further cripple medical care, putting lives at risk. Meanwhile, fuel shortages trigger endless gas station lines, paralyzing transportation and worsening blackouts that last for days. Hygiene products, sanitary pads, soap, and toilet paper are either unavailable or priced beyond reach in dollar-only stores. Even clean water is unreliable, with many relying on sporadic water truck deliveries. Emilio Cedeno, a retired shoes person, talked to the reporters about the cruel reality here.
Americans don't allow anything to come in here. Anyone who says otherwise is mistaken, and we are the ones who pay the consequences.
The shortages form a vicious cycle without fuel. Supplies can't be transported without power. Water pumps fail without medicine. Treatable illnesses turn deadly, from crumbling homes to stifled futures. Scarcity defines every aspect of Cuban life. Building materials like cement and paint are nearly impossible to find, leaving families unable to repair crumbling houses. These aren't isolated crises. They're threads of an unraveling society, with no end in sight. Each day becomes a test of resilience, pushing more to make an impossible choice, endure the unbearable, or leave everything behind. To survive, Cubans must raise their voices to demand their rights and ensure their survival.
Today, because people in Cuba, they went out to the street asking for their rights, and because of the virus, that the government is not helping them, the hospitals are all full, and the police is just hitting people and putting fines on people just to go out. So that's why we're here supporting our people, and you can see it.
But speaking out in Cuba is dangerous. Sadly, even just complaining about power cuts or food lines can have serious consequences. During the historic 2021 demonstrations, when crowds bravely chanted "We're hungry" and "Freedom," the regime responded with harsh crackdowns. Surveillance increased. The internet was shut down, and hundreds were arrested. Authorities even blocked social media to control the narrative and silence dissent. We have to go over our dead bodies if they want to confront the revolution. And we're ready for everything. We'll be in the streets. The Cuban government has institutionalized repression through calculated tactics designed to crush opposition. During periods of unrest, like the July 2024 blackout protests, authorities immediately sever internet access, isolating demonstrators and preventing documentation of state violence. Critics face arbitrary detention under fabricated public disorder charges, with sentences often handed down after closed-door trials lacking due process. The regime particularly targets journalists, criminalizing independent reporting under Decree Law 370, which classifies truthful criticism as enemy propaganda. According to prisoners' defenders, Cuba held over 1,360 political prisoners in 2023, many subjected to torture, forced labor, and denial of medical care in high-security prisons like Combinado del Este. For high-profile activists, the government employs forced exile as a silencing tactic, stripping critics of citizenship under laws like Decree 349. These measures have created a climate of pervasive fear, yet failed to fully extinguish dissent. Protesters now employ decentralized tactics, flash mobs, encrypted messaging, and USB drives to bypass censorship. The government responds with escalated brutality, deploying rapid response brigades acting as paramilitary forces and sentencing minors as young as 16 to prison terms. This cycle reveals the regime's paradox. Its repression fuels the very desperation that drives protests, proving Cubans now fear starvation and collapse more than state terror.
There have always been crises, some big, some small. We've always had them.
Life for Cubans who stay grows harder under the weight of relentless blackouts, some stretching for days, turning sweltering summers into endurance tests. Hospitals struggle to function. Scarce food spoils in powerless refrigerators, and families toss through sleepless, sweat-drenched nights. In 2023, outages averaged 8 to 12 hours daily, with some areas like Santiago province suffering 72-hour stretches without electricity. Crumbling infrastructure, fuel shortages, and systemic mismanagement have made steady power a privilege, pushing even Havana's hospitals to the brink as life-saving equipment sputters offline.
The biggest power that the government, the regime has against us is fear.
The collapse of Cuba's power grid has triggered a catastrophic domino effect. Without electricity, water purification systems fail, contaminating already scarce supplies. Home-based enterprises, from tailors to private bakeries, are forced to shutter, eliminating vital income streams in a cash-starved economy. Perhaps most devastatingly, the little food remaining in family refrigerators spoils within hours, pushing malnutrition rates to alarming levels. The government's response has been inadequate, while officials blame U.S. sanctions for fuel shortages. They continue diverting limited diesel supplies to tourist zones and military installations, rather than hospitals or residential areas. Apart from the physical deprivation, these endless blackouts are inflicting profound psychological damage. The constant uncertainty. Will the lights come on today? Will the water run? Has created a collective trauma that becomes familiar in daily life. Children study by candlelight. Elderly residents endure sweltering heat without fans. And families ration phone battery life like wartime provisions. This normalization of suffering has become the regime's most insidious tool by making dysfunction routine. They numb resistance. Yet paradoxically, the despair is also fueling defiance. Each outage pushes more Cubans toward an agonizing decision risk, everything to escape, or stay and watch their future flicker out. The darkness isn't just in the streets anymore. It's in the hollowed-out hope of a generation. And in a digital world, that isolation is compounded by Cuba's heavily restricted internet access. While the government initiated internet expansion in 2019, Cuba's digital landscape remains tightly constrained by design. With an average speed of just 3.3 Mbps, slower than war-torn Yemen, and exorbitant costs consuming 20% of monthly wages for a mere 10 gigabyte data package. Connectivity is both inadequate and economically exclusionary. The state actively enforces this digital apartheid through sophisticated censorship. Deep packet inspection technology blocks VPNs. Independent news sites like 14Y Medio are blacklisted, and social media platforms face throttling during periods of unrest. A dedicated cyber surveillance unit, known as the Boleta Team, monitors citizens' online activity in real time, flagging dissenting voices for harassment or arrest under Decree Law 35's vague cybersecurity provisions. The human toll of this information blockade is devastating. Families are severed from overseas relatives. Independent journalists risk imprisonment for factual reporting, and students struggle to access global educational resources. The July 2021 protests revealed the regime's ultimate failsafe: complete internet blackouts, cutting off 7 million users simultaneously. Yet Cuban ingenuity persists. Underground networks share censored content via El Paquete, offline digital bundles. Activists use mesh networking apps like BridgeFi, and encrypted USBs circulate forbidden news. These workarounds expose the regime's central paradox. The more brutally it controls information, the more creatively citizens circumvent it. The digital underground has become Cuba's new battleground for basic freedoms, where every megabyte of uncensored data represents a small victory against isolation. Even the most qualified professionals feel trapped in an economic nightmare. Doctors with decades of training earn just $30 per month, less than a hotel bellboy makes in tips from tourists in a single shift. Teachers, engineers, and scientists now drive taxis or rent rooms illegally, as 500% inflation has made a nurse's monthly salary equal to just 2 chickens at black market prices. The cruel irony is that Cuba exports thousands of these skilled workers annually through medical missions, while those who stay can't afford their own clinic's medicine.
Life in Cuba is bad. There's hardly any food. You have to struggle to get by, and we can't live in Cuba anymore.
This wage crisis has birthed a desperate duality. Professors sell homemade pastries, surgeons' side jobs are taxi drivers, and entire hospitals operate where patients bribe staff with soap or food for basic care. The government's recent 400% wage hike in 2024 still left salaries below $50 per month, proving no amount of education can overcome an economy in freefall. Once a beacon of medical excellence in Latin America, Cuba's hospitals now mirror the nation's broader decline. In 2024, over 70% of essential medicines, including antibiotics, insulin, and hypertension drugs, have disappeared from pharmacies, forcing patients to supply their syringes, IV bags, and even cotton swabs. Doctors, working with outdated equipment and reused gloves, must improvise treatments, while pediatric wards face especially dire shortages. Desperate parents barter food rations for black market asthma inhalers or cancer medications, a stark illustration of a system failing its most vulnerable. The nation is globally renowned for its rigorous, community-focused medical training that produces highly skilled doctors emphasizing preventive care and humanistic values.
Here in Cuba, we learned that treating a patient is not just giving the medicine. It's about communication. It's about understanding what is going through the patient's life. And all that is going to make the patient feel better, and actually that will help to give a better treatment.
However, it has lost over 12,000 physicians since 2021, enough to completely staff every major Havana hospital. The doctors who remain work in crumbling facilities with 1940s-era equipment, earning less than taxi drivers, even as Cuba continues exporting medical professionals abroad through its lucrative medical diplomacy program that provides vital care in underserved regions worldwide. This mass exodus has created critical staffing shortages across the island, leaving rural clinics without specialists and pediatric wards unable to treat preventable diseases, resulting in the cruel irony of Cuban doctors saving lives abroad while their citizens, including children, die from treatable conditions at home. Due to the very lack of medical professionals, the government continues sending overseas. The healthcare breakdown stems from multiple shocks. The U.S. embargo restricts medical imports. Economic mismanagement has crippled supply chains, and the government prioritizes foreign currency earning programs over domestic care. While Cuba's medical diplomacy wins geopolitical goodwill, its people pay the price. The result is a tragic duality. A nation famed for medical care now struggles to treat its own citizens' most basic needs. Surprisingly, Cuba's 99.8% literacy rate and free university system produce some of Latin America's best educated citizens. However, their talents are largely wasted in a faltering economy. In 2024, while official unemployment sat at 1.5%, the real crisis was underemployment engineers earning $40 per month driving taxis, which can make that in a day. Biology professors, waiting tables, and surgeons tending bar. Moreover, a doctor's monthly salary equals just 6 hours of taxi work for tourists. This brain drain isn't just about individual hardship. It's systemic collapse. Cuba graduates 15,000 university students annually into an economy with near zero professional openings. The result is fierce. Either exodus, with 30% of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, graduates leaving within 5 years, or despair as the educated class is squandered. Don't you know that Cuba's streets and airwaves stand apart in the modern world, devoid of commercial billboards, TV spots, or digital ads? Instead, public spaces feature revolutionary slogans or health campaigns about dengue prevention. This absence of consumer marketing creates a visual landscape frozen in time, where propaganda posters outnumber brand logos. The policy stems from Cuba's socialist principles, rejecting capitalist manipulation of desires. While tourists might find the lack of ads jarring, Cubans have grown up in this alternative media ecosystem, one where political messages occupy the space where commercials would normally compete for attention. Following the lack of commercial ads, Cuba remains one of the few places in the world without American fast food chains, except for a single McDonald's operating at the U.S. Naval Base in Guantanamo Bay. This surreal exception highlights the embargo's contradictions while Cubans are barred from Big Macs. The Golden Arches still fly on disputed territory. The Guantanamo McDonald's serves as a bizarre symbol of Cuba's geopolitical limbo, accessible only to base personnel, yet visible proof of what lies just beyond reach. For ordinary Cubans, it's a reminder of the economic barriers that keep global brands at bay, while fueling creative local alternatives like Cuban burgers, which are made with ham instead of beef. Not stopping that, Cuba is one of only 2 countries in the world, alongside North Korea, where Coca-Cola is neither officially sold nor advertised due to the U.S. trade embargo that has halted the soda giant's operations on the island since 1962. While some cans occasionally surface through third-party imports or tourism, Coca-Cola remains a rare sight in Cuba, a symbolic reminder of the decades-long economic standoff between Havana and Washington. Instead, locals sip on alternatives like Tucola, Cuba's state-produced cola, though many still crave the forbidden taste of the real thing. And yet, amidst all these paradoxes and pressures, Cuba is the living museum of 1950s American cars. Cuba's streets are filled with vintage American cars from the 1950s, preserved due to the U.S. trade embargo that cut off new vehicle imports. With no access to original parts, Cubans kept these classics running using Soviet engines, handmade repairs, and creative fixes. Today, around 6,000 Almendrones still operate, serving as taxis and tourist attractions.
I made this sheet metal bender myself because I used to spend days working on parts like these. It makes everything go faster, and the work is less stressful and healthier. I copied it from an original, and these metal shears too.
These cars are more than relics. They represent Cuban resourcefulness. Brightly painted Chevrolets and Fords now drive tourism, offering nostalgic rides while supporting local livelihoods. Their survival is a testament to Cuba's adaptability and enduring spirit. Amidst the urban decay thrives the Zunzunchito, the 2-inch bee hummingbird that symbolizes Cuba's ecological resilience. Weighing less than a penny, This endemic marvel thrives in untouched forests, its iridescent feathers flashing like scattered gemstones. UNESCO recognizes Cuba as the Caribbean's most biodiverse island, with over 6,500 endemic species. The same isolation that stunts infrastructure protects nature. Remote areas like the Zapata Peninsula, untouched by development, shelter rare species like the Cuban crocodile. Ironically, economic stagnation became an accidental conservationist, preventing the deforestation that ravaged neighboring islands. While Cuba throttles digital connectivity, its ecological networks flourish. The island boasts 14 international biosphere reserves, even as its citizens queue for Wi-Fi cards. This contradiction defines modern Cuba, a place where hummingbirds dart freely as information remains caged. The Zunzunchito's survival mirrors Cuban resilience. Both adapt to scarcity with miraculous creativity. As restoration begins on old Havana's buildings, which are funded by foreign tourism, and young Cubans code offline apps to bypass restrictions, the island proves that beauty and innovation can emerge from decades of neglect. Cuban rum is a fiercely protected national treasure, granted the same geographical designation as champagne in France, with authentic production legally confined to the island and adhering to centuries-old distillation standards. Havana Club stands as its most iconic brand, yet its global presence remains entangled in a bitter, decades-long trademark battle with Bacardi, a dispute that extends beyond commerce into the realms of politics and cultural identity. As said,
there was a risk because they knew that the brand cannot be traded in the United States, a brand forbidden in the 40% of the total market.
Besides Cuban rum, there are Cuba's global cigar supremacy stems from nature and nurture the mineral-rich red soil of Pinar del Rio's Vuelta Abajo region, often called the Champagne of Tobacco lands, produces leaves with unmatched complexity, while the island's humid climate creates ideal curing conditions. This terroir, combined with a 200-year-old tradition of cultivation, yields tobacco so prized that a single bale of Cuban wrapper leaves can sell for $3,000 at auction. Master torcedores, rollers train for a decade to perfect their craft, hand-rolling each cigar with precise tension. Too loose, it burns unevenly. Too tight, it won't draw. Brands like Cohiba and Montecristo maintain exacting standards. Every Habano, the protected designation for authentic Cuban cigars, uses 100% Cuban tobacco and undergoes over 500 quality checks before export. In addition to luxury exports, cigars are woven into Cuba's identity. Factories like Havana's Partegas host live lectors, readers who entertain rollers with literature, a tradition since 1865. Yet even this cultural icon faces challenges. Counterfeit Habanos flood global markets, and U.S. embargo rules complicate sales. Still, each box carries Cuba's essence, soil, skill, and stubborn pride in perfection. Moreover, Cuba remains a cultural powerhouse. Its music has shaped global genres like salsa, son, and rumba. From the Buena Vista Social Club to modern timba beats, Cuban rhythms carry the island's soul, blending African roots with Spanish melodies to express irrepressible joy. Even in hardship, music pulses through Havana's streets, where three-chord trova songs tell stories of love and protest. This musical tradition fuels Cuba's vibrant social fabric. Neighbors transform blackouts into block parties. Street musicians create spontaneous concerts, and underground rappers distribute their work on universal serial bus drives to bypass censorship. The music becomes both an escape from hardship and a quiet form of resistance, proof that creativity thrives even when resources are scarce. On the other hand, baseball is more than a sport in Cuba. It's a cultural obsession and a point of national pride. Introduced in the 1860s, the game quickly became ingrained in Cuban identity. with local leagues producing legendary players like Omar Linares and Jose Abreu. Despite limited resources, Cuba's baseball program remains world-class, earning multiple Olympic gold medals and consistently ranking among the top international teams. The island's fierce rivalry with the U.S. transcends politics, showcasing raw talent and passion. Today, Cuban stars like Yoan Moncada and Randy Arozarena dominate MLB, proving Cuba's enduring baseball excellence, even as players often defect for better opportunities. What's more, Cuba gifted the world its most iconic cocktails, the mojito, daiquiri, and Cuba Libre, each born from the island's sugarcane fields, colonial history, and inventive spirit. These drinks blend local ingredients like Havana Club rum and fresh lime with stories of rebellion and resilience, turning simple recipes into global legends, farther than refreshment. These cocktails symbolize Cuban culture. The mojito's refreshing mint echoes the island's vitality. The daiquiri's simplicity reflects resourcefulness, and the Cuba Libre's rum and coke mix mirrors cultural fusion. Every sip carries a taste of history. One interesting fact is that Cuba's 100% literacy rate fueled the creation of one of the world's strongest medical systems, boasting 8.2 doctors per 1,000 people. The country's free universal healthcare model has become a global export, with Cuban doctors serving in over 60 nations through medical diplomacy programs. Yet at home, the system faces severe shortages of medicines and equipment, forcing patients to bring their supplies. While Cuban physicians are renowned worldwide, those who remain often earn less than $50 monthly, highlighting the painful gap between ideological triumphs and economic reality. Surrounding Cuba's struggles is a breathtaking natural endowment. Over 5,000 kilometers of coastline featuring pristine white sand beaches like Varadero and vibrant coral reefs teeming with marine life. This ecological wealth creates a striking paradox, an island rich in natural beauty, yet burdened by man-made scarcity. While tourists flock to all-inclusive resorts, locals face restrictions accessing these same beaches, a duality that mirrors Cuba's broader tensions between isolation and global engagement. This complexity extended to Cuba's monetary system, which until 2021 operated with two currencies, the peso nacional for locals and the convertible peso CUC for tourists. The system created absurd distortions, a doctor earning 3,000 regular pesos monthly, about $12, while a hotel worker could make that in convertible pesos from tips in a single shift. Though officially unified in 2021, the legacy persists through a dollarized black market and wage disparities that continue to warp Cuban society. Like the coastline separating land from sea, this economic divide still marks where ordinary life meets privileged access. To summarize, Cuba stands as a land of astonishing contrasts, boasting the legendary hand-rolled cigars and a 99.8% literacy rate, yet grappling with crumbling infrastructure, food shortages, and one of the world's most restricted internet systems. With such unique potentials and persistent challenges, what future do you envision for this extraordinary island nation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Enjoying the content? Help us grow by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you so much for your support. See you next time.